Can you guys hear that background noise?
Yeah,
Why is that happening? That's so weird.
it's from macro analyst.
I know, but
Yeah, I know.
There is also echo.
yeah. How about now?
Now it's good.
That is so weird. Okay. Well, hello everybody. Sorry for that technical difficulty. Welcome to episode 168. Man, getting wild. About Tesla, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. What's the latest on the FSD rollout?
The version 12.5.1.5 went out to about 5% of the fleet in the US and Canada. Same as I mentioned yesterday, so there were no waves since yesterday, but there was a big wave the night before. I'm guessing that there will be probably another wave later tonight or tomorrow, unless there is some showstopper that would require a new version release. Otherwise, it seems to be progressing pretty well, relatively slow, but it's picking up pace. So, like after each delay, the next wave is bigger than the previous one, which is usually a good sign that everything is going according to plan. There is also a big rollout of the mainstream version going on. So basically, there is the summer release, the version. There are several versions of it going out. The biggest one right now is 26.7, 2024.26.7. Looks like it's rolling out to the majority of the fleet, the worldwide fleet. So that's the dominant version right now, and it's actively rolling out right now. There is also a 26.8 version just released a couple of days ago. That one, it seems to have like some minor additions, like there is an improvement in the emergency braking system, something like that. That just started rolling out, so it's not a major stream yet, but that's probably will be coming next. All those versions are just the mainstream versions. So they come with the older FSD 12.3.6, just as all previous versions as well. So there is nothing new on that front. However, because of the version numbering, the way it stands right now, it should be safe to install those versions for those who are awaiting 12.5 FSD. So it should not prevent them from getting the update once it's released to their cars. So if you get that update, don't worry, just go ahead and install it. And the next, and let's wait, hope that 12.5 will go wide in the next few days. I'll have to drop out soon, so if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you very much for the update. Do you remember Ashok's comments around making adjustments to work it on hardware 3? The same model, run it on hardware 3. Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, it's I don't think it's ready yet, so it probably will take some more time to put the same model with the same parameters and everything on. But I guess Tesla is confident that it's possible. And as a software engineer, I know that there is a lot can be done in software improvement. Like usually, initially, you take all the physical resources you have, but then once you reach the limits of the hardware, then you work hard to improve performance and reduce the resource requirements. So I'm sure it's possible. Where they stand with that, we don't know yet, but hopefully we'll know soon.
So would you be able to explain to us that second sentence, deploying the larger model requires us to implement a few kernels in the compiler? to emulate some same operations that are natively supported on the AI4 hardware. Would you be able to explain that to us?
Well, the way I understand it is that hardware 4, the AI4 processor, has certain functions that are implemented at the low level, at the hardware level, that will optimize the performance, like, certain calculations that can be done much quicker using those functions. And those are not supported in the hardware 3. So there are two ways how you can go about having the same software run on both platforms. One, which they probably were doing initially, is you just don't use those additional functions. You don't use that acceleration that is available in hardware 4. So you just design it for hardware 3 and simply run hardware 4 in hardware 3 compatibility mode, in which case, everything will run essentially as if it's hardware 3. Now, the next step that they're taking now is that they're now using those advanced functions that are only available in hardware 4. How do you do this in hardware 3? Well, you will have to emulate them in software. So basically, modify that kernel, that basically provide those functions, but implement them in software rather than in hardware. It will not be the same performance, obviously, but at least that you will be able to use that the same approach. And if you write that kernel efficiently enough, maybe the performance penalty will not be that big. So I think that's what they're trying to do now, is taking it to the next step where they can use those advanced functions or processes or calls on hardware 4, but on hardware 3, in order to use them, they need to modify the kernel. That's my understanding.
What does modifying kernel mean, though? Like, I don't even know what a kernel means.
Well, let's say you have a certain, I don't know if I can give you a good example of this, but let's say you have to do some, let's say you have to do certain functions, certain type of calculations that before wasn't possible. In hardware 3, it wasn't possible. It wasn't implemented at the low level. So you just avoided using that that calculation. You used something different. And then now in hardware 4, you have a very advanced function that you can use. So you can design the software to use that function, but you can now implement that same the same function at the low level. Instead of using hardware, you would use a software implementation. Kernel being the low level layer, like like the kernel of operating system, similar to that. So like something at the very level, so you can optimize that code. It's not a high language code. It's probably written at the very low level, and it will be optimized to the maximum. From your high level software, it doesn't matter whether it's written in hardware or in that software kernel. You just now have that function that you can call, and it will give you some advanced capabilities. So before you couldn't use it at all. Now you can use it, but because it's available naturally in hardware 4, but in hardware 3, they're still working on implementing it. I hope I'm explaining it well enough.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Can you explain to me also why you feel so strongly that Tesla needs to support hardware 3 and allocate engineering and training resources to make sure that hardware 3 cars can run the basically same performance as AI4 cars?
Well, I think because they are so invested in hardware 3. So right now, like by all calculations, it's a majority of the fleet is hardware 3 right now. Now, why it's important? Well, because Tesla will need the fleet of its vehicles before it can ramp up the production of the robotaxi, of this cybercab vehicle. It's going to take some time to ramp it up. So initially, they want to have the fleet that is on the existing models. And the existing models are predominantly hardware 3, especially if the way Tesla wants to build that fleet is by taking cars after lease or after or trade-ins, and those cars will be almost exclusively hardware 3. So even if you ignore the customers being able to contribute their cars, that capability, that possibility at all, just look at the own fleet that Tesla will provide to the robotaxi. That fleet will consist of predominantly hardware 3 cars initially during the first year or two. So that's why I think it's really important to support that for the robotaxi rollout. After some time, in a few years, it will be a non-issue. I mean, because the hardware 4 will and hardware 4 and hardware 5 next will dominate the fleet. Eventually, hardware 3 is not produced anymore. So it will
Okay,
not be
so
an issue later on.
so today, for example, if 60% of the fleet was hardware 4 and 40% was older hardware, you would change your opinion?
Well, the higher the percentage of the hardware 4, the less important it is from the robotaxi rollout standpoint.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Well, thank you very much for all the information, and I appreciate that you have to go, but you're welcome to stay, obviously, as long as you want on the speaker board. Omar, welcome. How are you?
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon for those of you on the East Coast and in Austin, Texas. We were just discussing Ashok's comments around, ability to achieve similar performance on AI3 versus AI4. And specifically the second sentence, deploying the larger model requires us to implement a few kernels in the compiler to emulate the same operations that are natively supported on the AI4 hardware. The team is actively working on implementing and verifying those operations. So once they take that step, it'll be indistinguishable. I know there's some videos out there comparing AI4 hardware 3 cars. What's your take on how similar is the performance today?
I mean, it's virtually identical, even with the smaller model. It's virtually identical. They both have hands-free. They're both smooth. They both perform virtually identical. Now, when they run the larger model, it's going to be totally identical. You're not going to be able to see any difference between what hardware 4 is doing today and what hardware 3 is going to do. So, hardware 3 and hardware 4 don't really matter for robotaxi per se, in the sense that they could put out a hardware 5 or a hardware 6, and you know like the scale of self-driving we're talking about today is tiny. There's only 700 driverless Waymos in the entire country. So country 300 million people, we got 700 driverless cars. In the San Francisco market, for example, we've got 300 Waymo cars. So they could put out a new hardware and produce several thousand of them probably in a week and just eclipse Waymo. So really, I think what matters is, can you even get one car to be driverless, right? If it takes a little longer for hardware 3 or even hardware 4, that's okay. I think it'll be possible on those hardwares too. But just get it out on one car. The purpose of really continuing to update hardware 3 and hardware 4 is that these are customers, their lives are important. So we want to make them as safe as possible. We want to make the software as good as possible. And also, of course, allow them to put their car on the robotaxi network if that's possible. But even, for example, achieving robotaxi on the latest hardware, I think would be a significant step forward. So, when he talks about these improvements, chips have certain instructions in them. Like, for example, I may give the processor an instruction that says multiply 3 and 5, and then it can give me the answer in one instruction. So the chip has what's called a clock, right? So you may hear like, oh, this chip is 3 gigahertz. That means that 3 billion times a second the clock ticks. And every time the clock ticks, another instruction goes through. So with a multiply instruction, I can say, okay, 3 times 5 is 15. Now, let's say that my chip didn't have a multiply instruction, it only had an add instruction. Well, then I could say add 3, add 3, add 3, add 3 5 times, and that would be the same as a multiply, right? But it would be 5 times slower than if there were a multiply instruction. Now, what you could do is take the GPU, for example, which can add up a lot of numbers really fast, and you could create a multiply operation on the GPU. And then you pass the number 3 and 5, and it really quickly adds up 3 5 times, and it gives you the result. Now you've essentially created a synthetic multiply instruction that the older hardware can use. And that's essentially what they're doing here. In order to run the inference engine at a higher speed, they're making some improvements that accelerate certain functions that are hardware native on hardware 4. So once they do that, it should be able to run the exact same model hardware 4 is running today, and any updates to the model should go out for hardware 3 and hardware 4 at the same time.
All right, thank you very much. Any other takes from the speaker board? If not, let's go to Ardian. Ardian, what's your question? Okay, Ethan, what's your question? Ardian, you want to give it another shot?
Yes. How's it going? Big question is, what are the improvements? What is the difference in 12.1.5 from 12.1.3?
Well, it's a major improvement. They've made the model 5 times larger, and you can see from the feedback on X, pretty much everybody is amazed. You're seeing many people say that it's able to do their drives without any intervention for the first time.
Yeah, I think the one area where 12.5 is so much better than 12.3 series is percentage of drives without any intervention. So non-critical interventions seems to have decreased, as I understand it, and more percent of the drives are being completed without any intervention. More people are experiencing it. And about Tesla, pointed out earlier that each release is going out to more cars, which is always a good sign. And he's expecting a bigger release this weekend, hopefully. All right, let's talk about Elon's comment on diffusion models. Omar, did you see that reply? I'll pin it at the top here. He replied to a tweet about video games, actually. I was hoping that maybe you can clarify it for us a little bit.
Yeah, this was a really interesting paper that DeepMind put out yesterday, but I didn't see Elon's comment yet.
So this tweet is at the top. The person, Ethan Mollick, says, diffusion models used in AI image generation are also game engines, a type of world simulation. By predicting the next frame of the classic shooter, you get a playable game at 20 frames per second without any underlying real game engine. This video is from a diffusion model, and Elon says Tesla can do something similar with real world video.
Yeah, so, I mean, essentially what he's saying is, these stable diffusion type image generation models, as a matter of fact, this paper was actually using the stable diffusion model to generate some of its results. So essentially what they did is they trained a model to look at the past frames of the game as well as the user input and predict the next frame of the game. So the game obviously has a bunch of code that runs the game and produces what's shown on screen. When you push the forward arrow, you move forward. When you push the backward arrow, you move backward, side to side, for example. So all the code that makes up the game is generating that game. So this is kind of mind-blowing in that you're getting something that's almost like the game, but it's all fake. There's no code that's being run. It's just a model that's trained on the game itself to mimic what the game would produce. So this is kind of like mind-blowing for people in software. Like, whoa, this is kind of crazy that this works. And I think Elon is essentially saying, we have models internally. I mean, they've talked about these before that can do the same thing with real world driving. They can, for example, say, okay, take this clip, but then have the car make a lane change over to the right or to the left. And a video will be generated as if the car had actually driven in the other lane. And this diffusion model is so advanced that it can really generate that footage and it looks realistic. So often what we're seeing in these models is that as the models get better, they're able to help you generate more training data that helps the model improve even faster. So it's really like these models really surprise us with what they can do. You wouldn't think that it could sort of recreate a whole game or recreate the physical world accurately, but that's very much possible.
Thank you. We have an interesting comment in YouTube live chats. I'm going to read that in a second, but Dallas, go ahead.
Yeah, tailing on that, I mean, how much of the data that they're using for inference right now do you think is simulated versus real world data?
There's a mix of both. Um, Real world obviously is the foundation of figuring out what's actually happening in the real world. But let's say, for example, you encountered an issue where a pedestrian ran into the intersection, an edge case. And so you've got the video of that edge case happening from the left lane. But now you say, hey, wouldn't it be great to really make the system resilient against this type of intervention? Let's run a few other scenarios. Let's have the model generate what it would look like if I were in the right lane. Let's have the model generate what it would look like if I were in the middle of a lane change. Let's have the model generate what it would look like if I was slowing down or speeding up right as I approach that intersection. And you can generate several variations on that example that actually make the data set more robust. So it's a very powerful tool. They have kind of simulation, like video game simulation, where they're kind of creating a video game that looks like the real world and then kind of playing it to train the self-driving system. And that's useful for some scenarios that are hard to find in the real world, like, for example, a guy jogging on the freeway in the wrong direction or something. But these diffusion models are actually getting really powerful. They can generate images that are photorealistic, not video game images, and it can do it in some cases much more easily than maintaining all these simulations. So these generative AI models, same kind of image generators we're playing with on Grok and ChatGPT, they're actually super useful for creating the self-driving data sets we need to train our cars how to drive correctly.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
So I think what you're going to see in the future is
Well,
that
hold on one second. Hold on. We have somebody coming up to read the comment. Brian, can you explain to us what you said on the live chat? Brian, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, my mic was off. Yeah, I was at work and my wife didn't expect me to need a ride home. I was getting a lift with someone else. So I said, I'll send you a text if I need a lift. I sent her a couple of texts. She wasn't responding. So I checked the app. She was heading kind of by my location on the freeway. And I just sent the destination of my office to the car, and she was in that full self-driving. She said the car took the off ramp, and then I looked down and I saw that the destination had changed to your office. So I just let the car take it to you, and it came right to me, and I didn't even know that was a thing. So I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah,
So
you
is
may
on-
be one of the first person to summon a Tesla robotaxi.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was possible too. So it doesn't matter who's in the driver's seat, as long as there's someone in the driver's seat, you can change the direction of the car with your phone app.
That's appears to be. I haven't tested it since then, but it just happened yesterday and it worked great.
Well, does the person have to approve it at all?
No. If you have access to the car, then you have access to change the destination. The person in the car can, of course, hit end trip and pick a different destination, but you can send any address, and if the car is in FSD, it'll just immediately start driving there.
Xander?
Alan, the way you do that is you just go into like your Maps app, and if you hit share, whichever vehicle is selected in the Tesla app, so if you have multiple vehicles and you hit share, it will go straight and override anything that is currently in the maps, and no approval is necessary.
And also, you can now go into the Tesla app and go into the location section, and you can enter an address or even multiple addresses, multiple stops in there.
And I guess the person can just take off, can disengage from FSD if they feel. I'm just thinking about any sort of downside to this or security concerns or anything.
Generally, you're not going to give someone access to your car unless they're a trusted party. And, the driver obviously has ultimate control. But the only people who are going to be able to do this are the car owner and maybe their husband or wife.
Have you ever tried it?
Yeah, I use it all the time, of course. I'm late to the dentist, whatever, have it in my calendar or send it over, then I get in the car, just push one button and FSD drives me there.
No, I mean, have you ever changed the direction of the car when someone else is in the driver's seat?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll send addresses to like my friends, for example. Like, let's say me and my friend are driving somewhere, and I'm like, okay, no, we need to go here instead. If I have access to their car, I'll just send them the location, and then FSD will just start driving there.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. That's really crazy. Arjun?
Yeah, before this person's wife even realized what had happened, the car had already got off the highway.
Ardeen, go ahead.
Yeah, are there any plans to add a soft button and a non go to park to change from autopilot to FSD?
A
I
soft
really,
button?
yeah, I mean, not just autopilot, but cruise control versus FSD. If you had a soft button or a quick change instead of having to place the vehicle back in park and stop to get back in FSD mode.
No, I'm not sure. I mean, you can change it in the autopilot settings. If it requires you to park, then that may just be the way it is. But I think they kind of expect everyone to just stay on FSD and not really switch back between autopilot and FSD.
We have a question from live chat that says,
One
will
thing you can do,
Cortex
one thing you can do is have different profiles with different settings, and then maybe changing them would help.
question is, will Cortex benefit hardware 3 at all?
Yes.
But they're going to train AI 4 models over there, right? So how would it work?
Well, more compute is more compute, right? They may not be using the facility in Texas per se, but now they've got more compute in Palo Alto to dedicate to hardware 3. So generally, when you train a bigger model, the smaller models benefit. There's a lot of ways to distill the improvements of the bigger models down into smaller models as well. So both hardware 3 and 4 are going to continue to improve. And, in particular, right now, the models they're training in California are the ones powering both hardware 3 and 4. So right now, they're exactly the same. With this new Cortex data center, they're probably going to start training larger models for hardware 4. But oftentimes, you're able to distill that down into a smaller model and retain most of the characteristics of that model, just like what we're seeing with 12.5.1.5 on hardware 3 today.
Thank you, Dustin. Dustin, you have to unmute yourself for us to hear you. Now, we have quite a few new speakers today that may not be familiar with how the spaces work. Interesting. Anyway, Yoda, how are you?
I could be better.
Do you have SMCI?
I have a little fraud company on my hands, apparently.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll buy more. One question
Will
for
you really?
Omar. Yeah, I've sent some
Did you read the
emails.
Hindenburg report?
I'm in contact with Nicole over there in their IR department. I'm trying to get to the bottom of this. But
Don't
let's
talk to
talk.
their IR department. Talk to Nate Anderson. Read his report, then decide for yourself. Shorts aren't always correct, right? Sometimes they've got something, sometimes they're grasping at straws. Nate Anderson and Hindenburg, they're one of the best in the business. I, take everything they say pretty seriously, but I haven't read the report yet myself. I need to do that tonight, maybe.
Yeah. Back to Tesla. Omar, do you think a good way to think about the large versus smaller models is kind of like Coast Notes, whereby if you're trying to distill a book down to its Coast Notes, that when a student is trying to cram for a test, that if it only read the Coast Note, it could still do pretty well on the test, on the exam.
I mean, think of it like a long-winded rant on social media that's 5 pages long. And you say, hey, you think you could cut this down to maybe 3 pages? And the writer's able to cut it down to 3 pages, and most of all the points are still there. As a matter of fact, people maybe even understand it a little better because it's more concise. So it's smaller, but you've kept the character of the overall essay. You've just edited it down. So a lot of these models, when we train them, there's a lot of empty space in there, per se. It's not there's neurons that aren't actually doing anything. So quite often you can compress that down into a smaller model and get most, if not the majority of the characteristics of the larger model. So it's kind of like editing your writing down to be more concise. It's not exactly the same, but hopefully the same point gets across.
Yeah, I agree. And I think to what you're saying there, there's a point where the conciseness is actually beneficial, and then there'll be a point where it's so sparse that you're losing something. But I know through my own use of APIs from Mistral as an example, at one point it was certainly on par with, let's say, GPT 3.5 or even 4. And in fact, I switched, to Mistral for that reason. And then, the models will continue to advance. And so, of course, now I'm back at using 4.0, let's say. But I think, yeah, there's a parallel. So I personally, I'm not too worried about hardware 3 using a smaller model.
Yeah, I mean, hardware 3 is not even going to run a smaller model. It's actually going to run the full model hardware 4 is running. They just have to make some improvements to the inference engine first, and I'm sure they're going to achieve that. Now, beyond that, hardware 4 could run a model even 8 times bigger. So there could be even further performance improvements. But I think if you see 12.5 on hardware 4, you'll think, yeah, it could probably be possible to create a model that drives with a safety level greater than human within a model of this size. So, yeah, I think it's very promising.
Machine coming in like a wrecking ball. Go ahead. What do you have to say? You just muted yourself, dude, after being unmuted. I think something changed. Are you on the desktop? You're on the desktop, aren't you? I think what happened was something changed in the code. It looks like you're muted when you're not muted, and it looks like you're unmuted when you're muted. So do the opposite of what you're used to do.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
That's weird.
I know.
I was
Story
gonna
of my
say-
life. Every single day, there's a new bug in this app. And the app
Well-
experience is very different from the laptop experience, which is really weird.
Maybe
This is a
I bet-
disaster waiting to happen if people think they're muted and start having
I
sex with Machine's mom, and then everyone can hear.
Exactly. This is the liability to RX. I started out with macro analyst bringing all this music from the background. Anyway,
it's
Machine, I'm sitting down. Give it to me.
very not promising. I mean, if you talk about trying to distill a paper into 3 pages, basically Elon Musk has taken the entire Twitter directory of instructions how to operate the company and distilled it down into 3 pages. And now the mute button doesn't work. So this is a prime example of people getting over aggressive with this whole, oh, we can distill things down into very small models and everything will work perfectly fine. And meanwhile, you can't actually mute this live space. You can't stop at a red light at the right time, which the latest software cannot do. And these sort of things are what happens. There's become this over exaggeration on the ability to distill models down without any information loss. This is asinine. Okay, there's always some information loss. You can go look through the literature. You could just go look right now at Llama's performance of their 8 gigabyte model versus their larger model. You get a decrease in performance when you distill the models down. This whole idea that there's free neurons that are zeros, you just got to eliminate them and there's no change is wrong. There's always a loss. The question is that loss okay enough given the performance benefit that you've gotten from training a larger model to begin with? And that's where Tesla's stuck. Okay, Tesla is working to get the state-of-the-art model good enough to be a robotaxi, and they're not there yet. So they're going to have to keep increasing training time, data ingested, and model size per scaling laws. That's the best way to do it. They're going to have to keep increasing those things until they get to a point that the model is actually accurate enough on their training compute to be a robotaxi. Then they take that model and distill it down to make it work on hardware 4. And then they're going to try to distill it further to make it work on hardware 3. And the chances are, as they distill those things down, the accuracy degrades to where it can't actually be a robotaxi anymore. And part of that's just a challenge ultimately. This whole idea that they're just going to voila make everything perfectly work on a limited hardware, that is silly.
Omar.
I think it's a bit of a straw man argument. Nobody's claiming that a distilled model is identical to the larger model. But here we have Mr. Chicken Little, the sky is falling, who came in here for a month saying, oh, hardware 3, the end is nigh, the end is nigh. And now we find out it's going to run not a distilled version, but the same model that hardware 4 is running, the same model with performance improvements. Meanwhile, we have this slightly smaller model, which I have actually been testing, unlike Machine, because he's on hardware 2. And I've been testing the hardware 4 and the hardware 3 models, the smaller distilled model, and they perform exactly identical. They have the same performance and personality characteristics. The hardware 3 version was a big jump from 12.3, even with this distilled model, and they think they can run the full size model. So what's promising is if they can run the same size model that hardware 4 is running right now, that model is able to do virtually every drive without intervention. Look at what people like Bradford Ferguson are saying and other people who are trying it. They're like, wow, this is a big change. And he was not a fan before, even on older versions. He lives in Indiana where this stuff is really challenging.
Okay.
So when I look at the hardware 4 model and they say that they can run a model of the same size on hardware 3, I think it's a lot more likely than people think that they can get to above human levels of safety.
Machine.
I think it's pretty amazing that the charlatan can come out and say, I'm making a straw man argument. And then he proceeds directly into a straw man argument. I never said hardware 3 wouldn't be able to support this 5x parameter model. I just said, look, now once it does, it's at its limit, as clearly stated by the CEO. So you're creating a straw man argument. I believe it can fit the 5x parameter model. And with that, it will achieve a miles per critical disengagement of, say, 500 to 1,000. Now you have to figure out how are you going to get from 1,000 miles per critical disengagement to 20 to 50,000. How are you going to get that 50x, Omar? Do you think maybe the model is going to have to get bigger yet again?
Well, it's not true that the only way to improve a model is to make it larger. As we've discussed many times, you see these smaller models continue to improve, and we're going to see hardware 3 continue to improve. I think there's a good chance it could get above human levels of safety. And I recommend you upgrade to hardware 3 and try it out for yourself so you don't make a fool of yourself making all these condescending comments that frankly don't reflect what millions of people are experiencing every day with the software.
Hey, Machine, we have a suggestion in the replies from Bull 2035 who says, can Machine be given a 5-minute daily segment in the tradition of Andy Rooney?
I think that's a great idea, to be honest. It's probably one of the best ideas I've ever heard in your spaces, and not surprised it didn't come from you or Omar. What we hear mostly here is nonsense from Omar. He gets 50 minutes daily. All I'm asking for is a small 5. And in addition to that, I will guarantee that in those 5 minutes, I will either be working out or taking a shower. So you can multitask your envisioning of my sexy body.
Thank you. Yoda?
Hey, Machine, I was wondering, now that Tesla is encouraging folks to demo FSD, would you be open to scheduling a demo on either hardware 3 or hardware 4 vehicles?
Would I want to take a demo?
No, yeah, you would book a demo, I guess, but sort of do it periodically.
I have no interest in a hardware 3 car. It's just a total waste of time at this point. Anyone with a brain at this point and common sense can see where things are headed. The CEO himself, without directly saying it, is intimating that hardware 3, hardware 4 are starting to separate. So there's no reason for hardware 3. Now, hardware 4, maybe I would demo to try to track. I'll just find some scrub on the peninsula to give me a ride whenever I want. I can find these people. They're a dime a dozen. There's always Omar. I can DM him, some other loser who wants to give me a ride. No, Omar, you're not a loser.
Yeah, we should probably do another drive, maybe this week or something
Yeah,
with
but
the latest model.
what I'm really interested in, and what everyone should be interested in, is hardware 5. This thing's gonna have another 8x performance increment to hardware 4 probably. And every order of magnitude more compute you have on inference, your chances that this thing will work as a robotaxi probably goes up 30, 50, 100% probability wise. So, I just think for people who are really, really, really want a vehicle that they think is going to be a robotaxi, ignore hardware 3 totally. If you already have hardware 4, great. But if you're looking to buy a new vehicle, I mean, wouldn't you want to wait a year?
Is that what you're planning to upgrade to for your next vehicle personally?
Yeah, I think my Model 3 is fully paid off now. It's like 6 years in. I think it would be a good time to get rid of it before the drivetrain warranty ends at 8 years. So that would timing wise end up with probably being a good time to get a hardware 5 model.
I mean, it's going to be
Okay.
at least several years before hardware 5 has any difference from
Yeah.
hardware 4.
We have a couple of hands, but before that, a quick shout out to our sponsors, links to which are at the top of your screens. Paymore is proudly sponsors Tesla Live. Paymore buys, sells, trades, and recycles electronics because Paymore believes that the best technology doesn't have to come at the cost of our planet or your wallet. Join the Paymore revolution and make a difference for our world. Visit one of the 100 plus Paymore stores near you or visit paymore.com. The link is at the top of your screen. There's also a graphic that explains how it works. Tesla Live is proudly sponsored by Joa, your go-to source for premium Tesla accessories. From innovative phone mounts to cutting-edge charging solutions, Joa offers everything you need to enhance your Tesla ownership experience. Don't miss out on the special offer for the Spaces listeners. Use code TSLA Live at the checkout for an exclusive discount. Thank you, Joa, for sponsoring our Tesla community. Grant. Yoda.
Can I just do my shout out to my sponsor?
Yeah.
Thank you to my sponsors, the Tesla Shorts. Your bets against Tesla are helping long-term investors like me build generational wealth.
Thank you, Tesla Shorts. Machine.
Well, Omar's again wrong about how long it would take hardware 5 to quote beat hardware 4. Look how long it took hardware 4 to beat hardware 3 once they actually ported the model. Whoops, it was right away, because all it means is they train one model and it doesn't have to get distilled as much to work on hardware 5 as it does hardware 4. And that means bigger model, better performance.
Omar. And then Grant.
Well, it's been years since hardware 4 started production, and they still haven't trained a model that they don't think can fit on hardware 3. Hardware 5 production doesn't start for 18 months, at least, without factoring in Elon time. So we're looking at probably 2 years before it even makes it into a car, probably 3 at least before the software incorporates the extra power.
Hey, Machine, 2 news for you before I go to Grant. One, as I said yesterday, I have some family and friends listening to this every day. And one of them just replied and said, Machine needs some yoga and breath work in his life. And then the second piece of news, Vincent. Sorry, go ahead. Why don't you respond to that first?
I keep forgetting if I'm speaking or not with this stupid icon. But yeah, I actually have yoga and meditate, and I'm at quite peaceful outside of the space. The space.
You sound
is the
angry and sexually
antithesis.
frustrated today.
This space is the antithesis of a nice Zen-like outlook in life. Here I come in and I just hear lies, and it's just
okay.
too much.
The second piece of news is Vincent tipped $10 on YouTube and said, "I'll fund the machine for 5 minutes." Oh God.
Well, I won't say, I would just say there's some people who've called me a male gigolo, and the rate, Vincent, for 5 minutes is still more than you make in a year.
That's it. Is it just not good enough challenge for you? Grant, why don't you fill in the $5 for Vincent's $10?
I would be happy to. I think you've finally run out of other things to bring attention to before calling on me with my hand up. I've got two things. First, I don't like picking on Tesla because I don't think he's a very smart person, but I would be curious for him to articulate how he's making money off of being long and how Tesla shorts are losing money when the stock is still 50% off its peak and down this year. I just would love to hear that. But the second thing is, I am not someone that's been around Tesla as long as a lot of the people on this board. So this hardware 3 debate is an interesting one to me. I did have someone link me an audio clip of Elon in 2016 talking about hardware 2 as this amazing revolution in technology that was going to make sure everyone got their robo taxis in the next couple of years. What happened there, and what can we learn from that? Because it seems like a relevant proxy for what might occur with hardware 3. Did they retrofit the cars with hardware 3 at their own expense? Did they just say, yeah, sorry, or what actually happened with hardware 2? Because obviously we were in the same exact spot, not too long ago. It seems to me like, there is going to be more compute, there's going to be more data. The hardware being better is obviously going to make it easier for them to get the cars to maybe at least 1,000 miles per disengagement, which would be cool. That'd be like 5% of the way to robotaxi. So at a point, I'm sure it seems reasonable to think they're going to need more hardware, compute than they currently have in hardware 3.
Your 5 minutes is up, and Vincent pulled his money because of the things he said. Yoda, would you like to respond to that?
Sorry, I heard something buzzing, but what was your question, Grant? Something about how I'm making money or losing money?
Yes, the stock is down 50% off its peak and down year to date, something like 30+% versus the index. How are you making money and Tesla shorts are losing money? I don't understand your claim.
Well, I'm not making or losing money, but I look at my investment in Tesla as as an asset, as a business that I own. I own a slice of the business. And so if I were to sell some shares that I bought, let's say 2 weeks ago, I would be losing money, but I'm not selling, I'm holding. But I've accumulated, as I mentioned, over 14,000 shares or in under 100 transactions in all this time, and I'm very happy where I am right now.
Omar.
Yes, my cost basis for Tesla is $4. And virtually the entire time, the shorts have been saying, ha ha, you idiots, we're making so much money off you. And, most of the time the stock was going down during that period. But you've got this situation where it now goes from $4 to $400, and the shorts are claiming victory, saying, ha ha, it's 50% off their highs. I mean, these people have literally given millions of dollars to us. So I thank them as well. And I think more is coming. They always get so overconfident before it blows up in their face. On the
Yeah.
hardware 2, hardware 3 point, hardware 2 is NVIDIA computer, and it was designed to be upgraded to a Tesla designed computer. They just formed the team with Pete Bannon, and they then replaced those in the cars. Hardware 3 and hardware 4 are designed to be backwards compatible with each other. There's always going to be newer chips, better chips, faster chips. Every few years, they design a new computer with a new chip and they put it in the car. But that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the old chips, other than that they're old. It's just like how Apple will do the iPhone 13 and 14 and 15. Every year the chip gets a little bit better, but they try and make iOS run on all of them.
Exactly. Okay, thank you very much. I'm getting some reports in the replies that the X spaces might be buggy, so I pinned at the top of your screens the link to the YouTube streaming. You can watch it on YouTube if there's an issue with the X space, and people switch around sometimes depending on which they prefer. All right, let's go to Edward. He's been waiting for a while.
Hey, yeah, I'm extremely upset with Omar. I mean, cost basis of $4. I mean, my cost basis is extremely higher than that at 18. But I also wanted to thank the shorts as well because they've helped, buy a Model 3 Performance, help buy a Cybertruck, and help buy my house. So, I mean, I thank Elon most of the time, but believe it or not, the shorts are doing a lot to help that cause.
Thank you. Grant and then Magic. We have 2 bears on the board now. If you count machine, 3 bears.
Yeah, I just haven't heard anyone actually articulate the mechanism through which shorts are making the money. I understand what a short squeeze is. I don't know that it's realistic to claim that the current valuation of the stock is a function of a short squeeze 4 years ago. One other fun data point is that the first time I ever went short Tesla was in December 2020. It's still, I mean, it was obvious at the time that it was a bubble to me. I know you guys all like YOLO'd in the back half of 2021. It was all exciting, but we're still trading below those levels. You guys have made less than $0 if you've held the stock since then. And I'd encourage you to, do a quick Google on what you would have had if you had a market index instead of Tesla. The short answer is you would have a lot more money today. And
okay, Magic.
Embarrassing for you.
Hey, yeah, I mean, just to piggyback off what Grant was saying, I mean, if everybody feels confident that the past is going to be exactly like the future, then just go all in. If you think it's going to triple again, please go all in. I just don't understand. The Bears aren't worried about your money. It's just like this is like somebody that doesn't know poker and is going all in. Please put more money on the table. You will be wiped out by professionals.
Okay.
I don't feel bad about it anymore.
We have some things to talk about, guys. This is not the time for empty threats to the other side. So we have, let's see, there's some increase in Cybertruck production rate apparently from Sawyer's screenshots of Joe Tadmeyer's video. Omar, did you see those? There's rows and rows of Cybertrucks.
Yeah, looks like production's ramping up.
Machine, does this give you any courage that Tesla's fundamentals are improving as Cybertruck production seems to be ramping?
I think they've probably bottomed out in Q3. I don't know about improving drastically, but I don't know.
Do you mean the margins?
Yep.
Okay. Sounds like you're busy, probably at work or getting yelled at by your wife. Someone in the comments said you should make up with your wife so that you can participate more in these spaces. I encourage that message. All right, Omar, let's machine.
The more I make up with my wife, the less I would be on spaces. She thinks these spaces are very, very dumb.
Yeah. Well, if you need a divorce lawyer, let me know. I can hook you up. All right, Omar, would you like to talk about Elon's? Actually, hold on, Dallas, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. Is it true that we're in the start of a new rollout for a trial period right now? I saw a post about that.
Oh yeah, free trials going out.
Tell us about it.
Well, people who got the update last night with the summer update got a 30-day FSD free trial. So it looks like everyone's going to get to try hands-free 12.5. And I notice the only people who can be negative about it are the people who aren't using it. You very rarely see someone with 12.5 who actually has something bad to say about it.
Grant.
I wanted to go back to the Cybertruck production. I am very curious how that production is pacing. what was the conclusion of that photograph of like 400 Cybertrucks in a parking lot? Is it that production's going up? I'm not clear what we're taking away from that. If I wanted to be negative, would say, oh man, they're not selling. I mean, like, do we have anything that we're basing a claim on beyond that, or do we have a clear conclusion?
Yoda?
Yeah, Grant, I had tacos with the factory workers that worked on the line. So back in June, at the shareholders meeting, it was I think it was they were doing 1,200 one shift, doing 1,200 Cybertrucks per week, and they were already ramping up to about 1,500 per week. And I think by the end of the year, they're targeting 2,000.
And when do you
I mean,
think it gets to go ahead?
yeah, I mean, I think to Grant's point, you can't really see anything from a parking lot. I mean, I think it's amazing just that they're able to even make this many. I remember when production was much lower and you'd never see a parking lot like this. But it could be that production's ramping and they're going to be able to sell these. It could be that these trucks have an issue, maybe a missing part, maybe something that is not working correctly, and they're having to store them before they can fix them and go out to customers. It could be that they just have inventory and orders are in excessive supply, and they may actually need to start making the non-foundation series to move those products. But they do have quite a few demand levers, such as making the non-foundation series that I think they could pull to get more orders in. It's certainly a popular product. So I'm not too concerned that, there's an inventory buildup or anything like that. I look at this and I count, $100,000 per truck. This is obviously going to add up to a lot of revenue for them.
My good life.
Yeah, so appreciate the discussion. I haven't been joining in a while, and I have been following a lot of Tesla's development through you guys. And as you know, I've been historically pretty much a skeptic on Tesla, but based on some of the latest updates with Hardware 4 and some of the videos that Homar blog posted, I think they're actually going to achieve
And the things you've
the
learned in the
robotaxi.
space, and the things you've learned in the space, right?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
but I guess my question still comes back to, like, let's say they achieve this, and let's say that they achieve this, I don't know, 3 years from now. Like, why is this suddenly this incredible valuable, software that they're going to see this huge demand in robo taxis to where it's going to generate tons of free cash flow to kind of support the valuation that it currently is at, or at least, from an investment perspective, obviously support a much bigger valuation. I mean, that's what I still come back to is I think they're going to achieve robo taxis, but what are the economics around that? Why is it going to suddenly, replace the number of Uber rides that are, seen globally? That's the thing that I'm trying to
Yeah,
wrap my head around.
I don't think anyone is using the word suddenly.
Okay.
But we're gonna get back to that. Grant?
I just wanted to comment or respond to Omar's comment that he was amazed that Tesla had 400 Cybertrucks in a parking lot. I am amazed at the extent to which you all are capable of self-delusion. I think that going
Okay.
into this year, well, I'm not done. I think going into this year, this is a constant, Yaman, you've been an advocate for this as well. I think that it's a good thing to set a baseline level of expectations and then keep yourself honest around them. I don't think anyone would have been thrilled or completely amazed at the prospect of 400 Cybertrucks in a parking lot a year ago at this time. But that bar is constantly lowered by you guys, so you can't admit disappointment in the performance of this company. It's delusional.
Okay.
I
All
think
right.
delusional is investigating to find out if Adrian Dittman is Elon Musk. I think it's spending all time searching the forums, claiming this product is a failure, and then being surprised when it's the best-selling product over 100K. And just look at this picture. This is great. This is a product that we've been waiting for years. to see them actually being able to produce a ton of them and get them into customers' hands, I mean, it's their best product yet. It's super exciting, and to just feel so hateful about this.
It's
You know,
just
it
research, Omar. You don't have to take it the wrong way. I know that Tesla stock hasn't been good to you since 2020, but that's what people do when they're trying to make smart investment decisions is research, not just delude themselves with constant spin zone nonsense.
well, Tesla's been one of the best returning investments of my life. I haven't been alive that long, but Tesla's been one of the best returning investments of my life. I haven't been alive that long, but
Was
it's been
talking
very
about since
good.
2020, bud.
Well, that seems kind of arbitrary.
Market's ripping like 60%. I mean, you can delude yourself again however you like, but I had a pinned tweet that
Look,
put
I
that.
mean, this company has been incredible in terms of its performance. It has demolished bears like you. And frankly, I don't really care what the returns are this year, next year. I love this company. Don't you get that? This company has built a car or really products that I love that drive me around. It has changed my life. And, to not own this company and see them change the world and then kick myself that I didn't own more of it is a greater pain to me than if it underperforms the S&P 500 for even 4 more years.
We need to move on. Let's go through the hands real quick. Dallas?
Yeah, just for reference, I wanted to add, I looked up online, and Fort Lightnings are built at a rate of 1,600 units per week, roughly. If that helps kind of put into scale Cybertruck production at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone cares about Ford Lightning. Nobody cares about F-150 Lightning. Nobody cares about R1T. This is about Cybertruck versus F-150 overall. Okay. Edward.
Yeah, sorry, you distracted me. You spaced me out. I'm sorry about that.
Yoda.
Yeah, Grant, I think it would be difficult to argue that Tesla's performance wasn't the best in the last, several years. But at the same time, uh, hindsight's 2020. On the stock market today, the best performer is some penny stock, called Mitian Energy and Metals that went up 130%. Now, if you held, say, Apple today, say you're Warren Buffett, would you criticize him for not selling Apple and buying this penny stock to maximize his profit? So yeah, I think that argument probably doesn't work.
Magic.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are saying that they made money on the stock. You don't make money until you sell, so everything is paper. So that money doesn't exist.
Edward.
Yeah, to paraphrase Galley, he said that you don't invest in companies just to make money. You invest in a company that you believe in, who is changing the future, and that you want to be a part of that new future. You're not just investing just on nickels and dimes trying to make a profit.
Okay, my good life.
I just want to say that of all the Tesla lineup, Cybertruck is my favorite, and that would be the one that I would buy if I were to buy a Tesla. I'm just not sure if it can fit in my garage, to be honest. I guess going back to, everybody's obviously bull and bear on the stock, but I mean, I do think Tesla has a chance to change the world with full self-driving robo-taxis. And I mean, that's really what I'm trying to figure out is the investment case around that, and, certainly when it could happen and why it would make sense to own the stock in front of that.
Omar.
Over the last 5 years, the S&P 500 has returned about 95%, and Tesla's returned about 1,325%. So the S&P 500's doubled in the last 5 years. Tesla's up 13x. And these are the same guys back in 2018 who were harassing me, who were suing me, who were angrily yelling at me that the company is going to go bankrupt. And now here we are in 2024, and they're saying, "You loser, Tesla stock hasn't been doing so good, huh? It's only $625 billion. It used to be above $1 trillion." It's just funny how much the goalposts have moved, and this is why I love owning this company. This is going to be the most valuable company on earth. They have game-changing products, and you have so many people across the spectrum, people like Grant, people who maybe hate the company because of Elon's politics, people like Machine who are just frankly spreading misinformation about what the current software can do, having not tried it themselves. And there's just so much hate for a company that is objectively like you look at SpaceX rescuing those astronauts from the space station. What Tesla's doing with their self-driving efforts, making self-driving low cost, something you can integrate into every car, the amount of lives saved and lives changed is beyond any of our comprehension. I mean, this is fundamentally going to improve the world's economic productivity. It is
Yeah.
huge. And all day
Yeah.
people are just angry, yelling, "You losers, you're going to lose money." I don't care if I lose money. Okay? This is important.
Okay. We talked about Elon's comment on AI diffusion models. Omar, would you like to talk a little about Elon's backing of the AI safety bill in California?
Yeah, I haven't looked too much into this bill, but it strikes me as overly burdensome. Um, I think, training a model without disclosing it could be a criminal penalty potentially. I think it'll probably drive the AI industry out of the state. So, it strikes me as not such a great bill. Most of the attempts to regulate AI seem to be um, questionable whether they'll have any benefit, and they have a lot of cost. But Elon has been a proponent for many years that some regulation is needed so that you can ensure safety. He's always talked about the existential risk of these models. So maybe something does need to be done. I don't know. I haven't looked into the bill deeply enough to have an opinion, but Elon coming out and voicing his support, saying something should be done, you could maybe try and figure out what the motives of that are, but it's certainly something that upset a lot of people. I saw some engineers and entrepreneurs saying, "This is my 9/11." Elon coming out in support of this AI bill, and definitely was not something a lot of people agreed with, but that's his position.
Somebody said this is my 9/11.
Yeah.
Like they were that surprised about Elon supporting this because when I just read his tweet and I read an explanation of what this bill is about, a bullet point explanation. It seemed like this is, I mean, in line with what he's been saying. He's been always been supportive of safety measures around AI. So why is that surprising to
Yeah.
people?
Well, a lot of people who are potentially impacted by these regulations don't like them, as opposed to right now when you can pretty much just do whatever you want and there's no regulation. So nobody likes being regulated. Um, regulators are usually just slowing things down. So I would say probably don't pass the bill if it were up to me.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Maybe we can talk about this more in the AI amateur space on Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Dig into this. Maybe dig into the bill itself and talk about it. Looks like you disagree with Elon on this one, which rarely happens. Yoda, what do you think about the AI safety bill coming out of California and Elon saying, it's going to come as a surprise to people, but I support it, he says.
Well, I think if like compute is equal to like power, then at the national level, I think there should be regulation, much like firearms, and there's probably some tracking of the number of nukes each country has. So I think from that perspective, when a certain organization acquires a certain amount of compute that becomes increasingly powerful for them to reach AGI, uh, that information should be made public, and there should be some regulations. Um, but yeah, I don't know the specifics of the regulation. Um, Omar, if you don't mind, I really don't believe what you're claiming there with regards to the 5-year or 10-year performance. Could you do like a chart where you map the overlays of Tesla against the S&P and Nasdaq and Dow?
Sure. While Omar maybe works on that, but maybe later. Yoda, while I have you on the board, I want to ask you about SMCI. Lots of accounting claims. This is a company that has been accused of accounting fraud before. About a decade ago, I believe they went through a similar situation, and the stock is down very substantially over the last few months. Actually, I use a reminder machine about our coffee bet on this. But so tonight, Nvidia is announcing earnings. I know you follow both companies very closely. You've actually recommended Nvidia to buy SMCI before. Have you updated your thoughts on either of these company? What do you expect from tonight's earnings release from Nvidia?
Well, I think it's in about 2 hours, but I think you know the world's stock market is asking a Taiwanese CEO or Taiwanese American CEO to save the world, and I think he's going to be up for it. I think that we're going to be blown away by Nvidia. The demand is insatiable. Um, you know, Look at the way we're interacting with the AI today. This is like Telnet. I'm dating myself here, but this is like the beginnings of the internet where we're worried about packets, hallucination, loss of packets here and there on the internet. Uh, the AI interaction is going to be multimodal. It's going to be always on, full context. Why are we asking AI questions that it does not have the context today of who we are? We are in the first innings. So yeah, I think NVIDIA is going to continue to have a great run in the next couple years at a minimum. With regards to SMCI, one thing worth noting is that almost every Taiwanese president in the past couple decades has had issues with fraud. So here we have a Taiwanese CEO here. But I think no, this is going to bounce back. I think they're going to issue some news to explain the situation. I Like I said, if your heart AI investments probably not for the faint of heart if you're picking individual stocks. So my position, I focus on TSMC, and then with a little bit of Nvidia. I did dabble into SMCI, unfortunately. I think it was yesterday, but now I am learning from my own greed.
Thank you very much for the updates. Omar, what are your thoughts on tonight's earnings release by NVIDIA? Many people see this as the most important stock. I've seen headlines. Most important earnings release. NVIDIA stock has recovered to near all-time highs before this earnings release, as opposed to SMCI or other AI-related companies that continue to see their stocks continue to go down. What do you think is up next for NVIDIA?
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a really closely watched stock, really closely watched earnings release tonight. It's kind of like the Super Bowl of earnings, the way Nvidia's run up. And it's really viewed as a bellwether for the state of AI because virtually every AI product depends on Nvidia. Tesla FSD, for example, trained on Nvidia. If orders are good, that means the AI industry is booming. If orders are slowing, that might hint that perhaps things are slowing down. Those companies aren't able to generate revenue or investments, and that maybe the narrative that this is a bubble is more true. So I'm sure Nvidia is going to have great numbers out for us. It's been really a stunning growth trajectory for the company.
but it'll really be viewed as a bellwether. I think what happens tonight will impact the broader market, not just Nvidia itself.
I agree. I'm really curious about what they're going to say. Honestly, curious about this stock just because it's run up so much. People are raving about its fundamentals, but I don't see it. I personally don't see these high margins continuing into the future, which is what really is needed to justify this level of valuation for Nvidia. My good life.
Yeah, so I I don't have a stake in Nvidia. I'm just trying to obviously understand the overall broader market right now, but I just wanted to read something that I had posted a little while back. So Nvidia traded around 5 times sales for most of its history. It currently trades around 38 times sales. If it grows sales for 20% in the next decade and trades at 10 times sales, which is rosy assumptions, it will really only have delivered a 5% continuous annual growth return. A 20% growth rate and 10 times revenue multiple is amazing, by the way. More realistic, it goes back to 5 times, grows at 15%. At that level, you have a cumulative loss of 46% over the next decade. Google has grown at 18% over the last decade, which is extraordinary. It currently trades at 7 times sales. So I guess what I'm trying to say is everything comes down to valuation. Obviously, what people are willing to pay. I mean, we have Costco trading at 54 times earnings right now. Walmart's over 50 times earnings. So, like, the market is just very confusing right now in terms of valuations. So, I mean, if I was an investor in Nvidia, I'd be careful here going into this report myself. But
Are you short?
no, I have no position in Nvidia.
Is anyone on the board short? Well, if you're so confident that you're going to come up to my speaker board and read what you wrote about this company, why don't you short it?
Because we live in dangerous times with a lot of liquidity and
I don't know. It sounds like you're just
cutting
not
rates.
as just sounds like you're not as confident in what you have to say as you sound. I don't know.
I'm confident in the math. The math is math. It's really just a matter of how this company performs in terms of growth.
So your
And
tweet just talked about the growth rates and multiples, right? Is that
correct. I
right?
mean, that's
Did you say
ultimately.
anything about margins?
I did not say anything about
Yeah.
margins.
So that's
Because
a
I was
missing
talking.
piece.
Well,
That's
I
a
was
major
no,
missing piece.
not exactly,
So
because I was talking
sorry,
about price to sale.
we're gonna move on. Okay. All right, so that covers NVIDIA. We talked about SMCI. Just going through my list. We talked about Cybertruck production news. Omar, let's talk some resale values. I'm seeing listings as low as $13,000 for a used Model 3, high mileage. Okay, these are cars that are being used on the Uber network or Hertz rental car network, etc. But $13,000, that's the lowest I've seen for a Model 3. I see the number of listings rising of the Model 3. We're now starting to see Model Ys for less than $25,000. I was talking to a couple of my friends who bought Teslas in 2021, 2022. We went through their transaction prices, what's included in their transactions in their Model Ys, FSD, other options, etc. They paid as high as $80,000. And now the same car is listed. Trade-in offer is about $30,000 for the same car. Where do you think this is going to end? There's a deflationary trend going on for Teslas. There are people out there waiting to buy because they believe the prices will continue downward. This morning, I pinned at the top, Tesla itself listed a Model 3 for $19,000 after tax credit. $19,400 after tax credit. This is a 2021 Model 3 with only 55,000 miles on it at the top of your screens. And if you buy it from Tesla itself, as opposed to a third-party dealer, you get a 1-year extended warranty, which ChatGPT says worth about $2,000. this is obviously going to be a problem for Tesla's new car sales. So it's material for Tesla investors. What are your thoughts around the declining resale values of Teslas? What does it mean to the stock? What needs to change for people to say, okay, you know what, this is the time to buy. I'm not going to wait any longer for lower prices.
I mean, I think really people don't necessarily want to switch to an EV. They've been told that, oh, you should get a hybrid, or, an EV is going to leave you stranded, particularly an old EV. And there's quite a bit of these things, Model 3 production now started 7 years ago that are now coming to the market. So really, I think if you saw material change in the demand for used Teslas, if, for example, it became more popular to get an electric car, or if FSD took off and people wanted a car that could run FSD, something like that, then you could see a cycle that started in the other direction where prices start going up. And when prices are going down, everyone always says, okay, I can wait next month. I might get an even better deal. When the prices are going up, then everybody says, okay, let me go run and get one now before it goes up even further. So it's really the dynamics of the market here. You have to not only look at Tesla, but look at other legacy automakers. And the other legacy automakers have a ton of cars on their lot. We've come out of the pandemic auto shortage, and now we have too many cars because the rates are so high, demand is lower, a lot of people can't afford it, and now they've got a ton of inventory sitting on the lot. So what they're having to do is give a ton of discounts and basically, almost give away cars practically. And Tesla has to compete against that. When you're looking at a used Tesla or a new Tesla, you're also considering your alternatives, which are to go to your local dealer and get a gas car or even get another EV from another brand. And in almost all cases, these other companies are able to undercut Tesla on pricing because um, they have, uh, you know, a lot more inventory and are willing to go much lower. Like, you're talking about this car for 19,000. The dealer's got other used cars there that are 15,000 or 11,000 on the lot that are gas cars, right? So why am I necessarily paying more for a Tesla if I can just get one of these cars and the bank isn't going to approve me for a loan? Or if they are going to approve me for a loan, it's at like 6 to 9% interest, depending on my credit score. So I'm really looking for a vehicle that I can buy in cash, right? And that's just kind of the market today. As
Yeah.
rates go down and people can finance and there's more acceptance, then you might see things start to change in the other direction.
Yeah. Actually, you mentioned a couple of rates. The used car market, interest rates for the used car market is like 14% average, which is
Right,
insane.
exactly. Which
New
is
car
why
market,
everyone's trying to buy cash.
yeah, new car market is like 5 to 9%. 10% is the average of all credit scores. And Tesla's 0.99, 1.99% is really just for excellent credit buyers. But there is an issue of this negative equity now. Really, it's not just a Tesla issue. It's the overall car market. Anybody who bought a car in 2021, 2022 has a negative equity in their loans, meaning the car is worth less than what the loan balance is. So that's going to be a problem for the next couple of years in the new car market
Yeah.
overall. Yeah.
It's a problem in the new car market overall. Pretty much everybody who bought a car during the pandemic dealt with this dealer markup. The thing is, because there were shortages and shutdowns in these other brands, they sold a lot fewer cars during this time period. Whereas Tesla was producing, everyone's like, hey, look at all these cars we're selling. And so we are more exposed to this negative equity problem where our most loyal customers who couldn't resist buying the cars, right? They buy everything. They got in on an $80,000 Model Y that's now worth far less. And they've got let's say $60,000 left on their loan, and the car's worth, let's say, $30,000. So if they wanted to buy a new Model Y, as much as they might like the new Model Y, low interest financing, want the new Model 3, whatever, they may really want a Cybertruck. But in order to get that, they've got to pay for the new car, plus roll over the 30,000 on the last car. And depending on what their credit looks like, the lender may not actually let them do that. So a lot of our most loyal customers, they simply cannot buy the car because of this negative equity situation. Now, if it were to improve and or time were to pass, eventually you do pay off the loan or sell the car as time passes, then you would see a lot more people ordering Teslas.
Yeah. Yeah, the only thing that worries me right now about this topic is, I mean, I agree with everything you said. I do think there will be a point in time where things turn up. But this idea that EVs depreciate more, Teslas depreciate more, is everywhere on every
Yeah.
single auto related YouTube channel with millions of viewers. People are kind of getting this ingrained in their brain, even though you and I know there are fundamental reasons why Tesla should depreciate less. One being over the air software updates that no other car can do. The other being fuel savings that accumulates to the second owner, and many other reasons why Teslas in fundamentally should depreciate less. But
Well, it's not
we're just
just that
going through this multiple years of you know misinformation being spread, YouTube channel to YouTube channel, X account. Really, dealerships are telling people, tens of millions of people are getting ingrained that Teslas depreciate more.
Well, it's first of all, it is a real issue, right? Because people don't want to buy a car if they are worried it's going to depreciate and then they're going to be underwater
Well,
on it.
so I want to make a distinction because you said it's a real issue, and I've seen many replies to the tweet at the top as well. People talking about that Tesla do indeed depreciate more, but when you use that tense, okay, when you're speaking, they do depreciate more.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm
that
saying
kind of
this. What I was
can I?
saying is this perception is a real problem, not that the depreciation was. So the perception
Okay,
is a real
but
problem because
can I just clarify for the audience at least? Okay, we need to be very careful when we talk about this and when we see other people talk about this. This is only a 1 to 2 year kind of phenomenon, only for people who bought in 2021, 2022. When you think fundamentally, there are fundamental reasons why EVs and Teslas should depreciate less than ICE cars. And at some point, we're going to get to that norm again. It's going to take some time for people who got this ingrained in their brain to switch to believe in the fundamentals of the story, but it will happen at some point.
yeah. So this perception is a real issue that people say, okay, I'm not going to look at it because of this. But when you look historically, it's not just should. Historically, go look at articles from before the pandemic. Teslas held their value better than any other car. In terms of depreciation, they were the number one lowest depreciation. And in fact, during the pandemic, Teslas were the fastest appreciating cars. The price was going up faster than any other brand. And people were literally selling their Tesla that they bought for more than they bought it for. Like the depreciation was backwards, right? So, for example, I bought a Model 3 for $50,000 and I got $10,000 in incentives. I got it for $40,000. I ended up selling it to Warren Redlick for, $42,000 at auction. So I drove the car for years and then sold it 3 years later and actually made money on it. So this was a pretty crazy situation. Now, during the pandemic, obviously, there were a lot of cars made, or there was a shortage of cars, and that pushed prices of cars up that did exist. So the Tesla prices kind of went up unnaturally high to very high levels. And everybody knew at the time, right? Every week it was going up like $1,000 more. And everybody was complaining back then. It was just sort of abnormally high prices. And now it's kind of come back down to what it would have been. It course corrected. Because of this anomaly of the pandemic, you see an anomaly in the data. But now look out forward. When people have a critical mass of chargers building, as people get comfortable with it, they're going to start to see these manually driven gas cars as obsolete. And their value is going to crater when people finally start to realize that all the cars in the future are going to be electric. Now, suddenly, an EV is the only car that people want to buy, and a gas car is just okay, it's harder to find a gas station, it's harder to service these things. Probably some of the companies behind them have started going bankrupt. And then, of course, you have autonomy. And then once you see the value of those ICE cars falling, while everyone's scrambling for even a new or used EV, it's going to create a self-reinforcing cycle. The slight drop, which will be covered, will then cause more people to run and sell their car while it still has some value. Because eventually, all of these gas cars will have a value of next to nothing, and nobody's going to want to be left holding the bag.
I agree with that is the future. I agree with everything you said that that is the future. The timing has been a little surprising to me because Tesla cut prices in January 2023. That was a major 20-25% across the world, across models type of price cut that was historic. And then February, March, April, May, they continue to reduce prices. So it's been about 18 months now from the midpoint of that. 18 months. And, ICE lease owners may be locked into leases for about 2-3 years. So we're kind of starting to get to that point where we should start seeing the impact of those new Tesla price cuts being reflected from used Teslas, which we've seen last year, to now used ICE and new ICE. Do you think that's the next step? Do you think we're going to see a bulging ICE inventories, let's say Camrys, Corollas, Civics, Accords, and other sedans and SUVs, RAV4s? Do you think we're about to see that, or do you think it's going to take Tesla to perfect FSD for us to see that impact on used ICE resale values?
I'm not seeing it happen at all in the US market today. I think it'd be interesting to look at like the Chinese and Norwegian markets and look at how values have changed there. But it certainly doesn't seem to be happening in the US that rapidly. People are very anti EV, they want hybrids, they want gas cars. It really does seem to me like the only thing that could really get the US market to change is autonomy, because the US does love new technology.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the part that's most surprising to me, that people are justifying, um, Tesla's this, Tesla service, Tesla that, instead of saying, this is the future. EVs are the future. People have just changed. Like most people we're not talking about the people in the space. We're talking about most people that I see in my, let's say, personal life on other social media platforms. People or investors that don't follow Tesla as close as we do. They're justifying in their head what's happening to Tesla's resale values, as opposed to kind of like thinking through it fundamentally step by step. And this is the next step. Interesting stuff. Pennington.
There's so many people I know who just will not buy a Tesla because of Elon Musk. And it's the one thing that nobody wants to talk about. I hate that it's real, but I hear from too many people who have just elected to go elsewhere. So I kind of feel like until he's able to your point, Yaman, until he's able to deliver technology, autonomy, that just works. Not that works sometimes, but that works all the time. And hopefully is able to just do some recovery to his brand. We are where we were, where we are. They haven't dropped the sticker prices for a while, but they're buying down interest rates. and that isn't de facto price cuts. So regardless, previous owners are getting hurt. New owners hopefully are getting good deals, but we don't really know.
Yeah, so we have an interesting three opinions on this now. Okay, so it is a fact that there's a deflationary trend in Tesla values. Okay, and I think this will continue for more months, if not quarters. But I don't think it's going to continue for a few more years. Okay, now Omar, me, and Pennington, we have different opinions on what it's going to take to turn this around, to reverse this deflationary trend. Omar says FSD getting really good. It's going to wait until FSD gets really, really good. Pennington says it's going to wait until Elon repairs his image. I think it's going to happen before those two. I don't think Elon's political tweets are going to get in the way of EV fundamentals overcoming this deflation trend. And I don't think it's going to necessitate, let's say, FSD unsupervised. I think it will happen on its own. I think Tesla and EVs in general will break this deflationary trend in the coming quarters on their own. But we'll see. Only time will tell which theory proves right. Let's hear from Tesla Yoda about this. Yoda, which one of these three theories do you think will win at the end of the day?
I think the interest rate is a factor that maybe wasn't mentioned, and also the natural cost decline of the raw materials that goes into making a car through Tesla's efficiency is also contributing to the downward price. So when we see a lower price of Teslas today, I guess all I'm saying is there's a cost reduction that's actually intended as well. But all you've said about the pandemic driving prices up is true. Ultimately, I believe it's a demand and supply issue. If there's a lot of people demanding for EVs, the used prices will go up. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you said interest rates, but interest rates impact both EVs and ICE. The crux of this debate is more about the relative depreciation trends, EVs versus ICE. In the last 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, EVs have depreciated multiple times more than ICE. And I'm wondering when that relative trend is going to change. Do you think interest rates is a factor in that debate?
Yeah, that's a good question there. You know, when we focus on markets like maybe LA, San Francisco, and there's a few markets in the US and even Canada where penetration of EVs and Teslas is high, we sort of get into a bubble. In recent travels to cities like Tokyo and some cities in Taiwan, uh, you realize that China is the exception, whereby EVs are growing at around 30% year over year. And in these other cities, major cities, you don't see many Teslas at all. I think it's like, well less than certainly China and say markets like San Francisco. And so for um, I just think the EVs are such a small fish in a pond that maybe that relative comparison of the used market for either of those are not as relevant globally.
Okay, thank you. David Katz and then Pennington.
Thank you. I like your analysis, Yaman, and what Omar had to say. We have seen the equation change recently, however, for the one reason that, Elon was always polarizing. We have a presidential candidate who's polarizing. And since the day he threw support publicly behind the Republican candidate, now we have people in shopping centers walking up to us as we park our Teslas saying, why? How can you do this? I have close friends who I have long relationships with, who I'm still friends with. It's not going to change, but they can't, just because it's a political reason. They have two sons who own Teslas and they're fine with it, but they can't do it. So we have to get through this election, because this has been an additional polarizing layer that gives people who are on the fence for no good reason to buy, talk about at least buying another vehicle that isn't a Tesla. They want an electric vehicle. They don't realize how they're compromising their purchase by not buying a Tesla. They're just basing it on this one metric now. Let's get through this election. I think we can get back to more normalcy. Of course, we need some more normal interest rates too.
You know,
Thank you, Dave.
all we can do is really just build the best product. There's going to be all kinds of people. They're going to use all kinds of marketing lines. We just build the best product, then I think rational people will buy it.
Pennington.
Yeah, I'm not sure the rational word is appropriate. I know a lot of people, very successful people, very bright people, and they're just not buying Teslas because of Elon Musk. They're very rational, but with certain things, the damage is already done, and they just simply won't do it. But I think the other thing is, we know that the cars get better with software updates, but the common person doesn't really care about that. So the other hope is that with new models, that could sort of reignite some vigor in sales if they refresh the Y. We're going to hopefully see some product releases, 1010 and the other releases not too long after. And hopefully,
Pennington, let me ask you a question. Let me challenge you a little bit
Sure.
on your views about Elon and the impact of it on Tesla sales and EV adoption rate. First of all, which state are you in?
Colorado.
Okay. So in Colorado, you have friends who refuse to buy Teslas because of Elon's tweet. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I would say Colorado, New York, and Florida. I have people and North Carolina, and they
Okay.
Tesla.
Now, how many people would you say?
I would say I probably know within the last 6 months, 10 people that have bought cars, and only one of them purchased a Tesla.
And what did the other 9 buy?
They mostly bought Audis, BMWs, those types of cars.
Okay.
But
Do you think?
no EVs, all ICE cars.
Okay, so that was my next question, because my question was, do you think they would have bought Teslas if Elon hadn't tweeted these things in the last 2 years? But it sounds like if they're going ICE, it sounds more like they just want ICE, not EVs. Because if it was the case that Elon's tweets was the primary reason why people weren't buying Teslas, they would have simply bought another EV.
No, they hate Elon Musk. These are people that hate Elon Musk, and it's not even a
I know, but why aren't they buying EVs from other companies instead?
So when I had a conversation not too long ago with my sister, and I was trying to convince my sister to get a Tesla, and she wouldn't. She wound up she has a Volkswagen, but she bought that car off of Lisa as opposed to getting a Tesla. And the price was comparable. So that's just how people are wired these days. We feel differently. We think the technology is the greatest determinant of sales, but oftentimes, particularly given the election and all this stuff, and
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, I disagree. I think people sometimes say things to justify their conceived decisions for other reasons. So let me go to David and then Omar.
I'll be quick. You are right in one respect. We have people in Tesla rooms we do at night, and they ask us about cars and to talk about Tesla, and they're on the fence between a hybrid and a Tesla. Some of them still can't get over the fact that they might have to charge on a trip. They want longer range, some of whatever reason. So there definitely is that. The other thing, I think, two things. in a family where you have a husband and a wife or a couple or whoever two decision makers are, you got to convince both of them. I have a lot of friends who would buy a Tesla in a heartbeat, but their wife would go crazy, or maybe vice versa. So there's actually two people in many purchases that have to be on the same page. Um, there still is so much misinformation. Obviously, we say it every day, but I'm in clubhouse rooms and we're talking politics, and all of a sudden EVs come up, and half of what somebody says is wrong, and I counter that, and they think I'm crazy, but I stand 10 toes deep and try and educate every day. But yes, you're right. Yeah, those people are not convinced that they're going to buy an electric car 100%, and that's part of the problem. But part of the problem too is that you've got two people to convince in many families, and to keep peace, a lot of people acquiesce.
Okay. I'm really interested in people's take on this topic. I'm really interested in what you think of this topic. And if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're watching the recording, please leave a comment below the video and share your take. I read all comments below YouTube videos and try to reply to as many as I can. I really appreciate the live chat discussion that's going on right now too. Live chat is accessible to everybody. And also I want to thank, before I go to Omar, I want to thank Future is Now, Edward. He just tipped $20. So this is the second super chat of the day. Future is Now, Edward says, I pay twice that to stop machines crazy rants. So somebody tipped $10 earlier to let machine talk, and Future is Now tipped double that to stop machine from talking. And he says, but in all seriousness, this space and channel are valuable service to people who want to understand Tesla products and the company. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Omar.
Yeah, what company sold more EVs than any other company on Earth this year so far? It's been Tesla every quarter. So the guy who everyone hates and doesn't want to buy cars from is selling more EVs than anyone else on the planet. When you look at the US market, Tesla sold 10 times more EVs than the next closest competitor, which was Ford. So, I think both in the case of the residual value question and this Elon Musk tweets question, it's just been vastly exaggerated dramas, right? This is a company that's reinventing transportation. And yes, if you're liberal and Elon Musk is your hero, a lot of times what these people are really saying is not, I'm worried about the brand damage. It's, I personally don't agree with these tweets and it hurts me. So when you really look at things in a global sense, rather than kind of in a US centric sense, you realize that most people don't even really care. And, it obviously clearly is a real thing for some people. But as you pointed out, a lot of these people who say, screw you, Elon, I'm not buying a Tesla, they're probably too broke to buy any new car. They just want to say that because it's a way of saying, hey, screw you for going against my political party. I'm going to get back at you. I'm going to ruin your business. And I'm sure there has been some negative effect, but there's probably a lot of bluster in there too from people who may not have bought any new car, let alone been able to afford a Tesla. So really, I think, Elon, it just is what it is. He's not going to sit down and shut up. He's not going to be nice and smile. He's going to speak up. And the Democratic Party came and attacked Elon. They said this guy made too much money. We need to take his company away from him. And Elon said, no, these guys suck. We need to get them out of here. Now, you can disagree with that. You can say Trump is a terrible candidate, but that is democracy. That is his right to do that. And I think Democrats, including me, really need to ask, why has our party become anti-Elon, anti-Tesla? This is not the right side. And that's why I don't consider myself a Democrat anymore. If we had been able to pressure our party leaders to support what Tesla's doing, and not fight against them, then I don't think we'd be in this situation to begin with.
Thank you. My good life.
I guess for me personally, I just don't think I find the Tesla lineup that attractive. I did say earlier I would buy the Cybertruck if I were to buy a Tesla, but unfortunately, my wife hates the Cybertruck. She thinks it's ugly. So I really think it comes down to just the styling of their cars. I mean, they've got like a computer monitor in the middle of their infotainment section. They only have like a couple of buttons on the steering wheel. I just think the design of a Tesla isn't for me personally. I would rather they focus on designing a better looking car from the interior and exterior. But what does sell me on a Tesla is what we're talking about, full self-driving. I mean, I think the technology is amazing. I would love to have it. I would just love to have it in a better looking car.
Yoda.
What car do you drive today, and what's your next car? From a design perspective, I guess. Would love to hear.
So that's a good question. I actually have always driven Hondas more for the practicality of them. In terms of styling and what cars that I think are best out there, I actually think the Kia styling is some of the best cars on the market right now. But obviously, from a perspective of the Kia brand, I don't think that necessarily is up there with Tesla and BMW and Mercedes and all that.
Well, they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and that is really true here today, with you finding your Honda more beautiful than a Tesla. I mean, probably most of the people in the space would tell you they're gorgeous cars. They stop and look at them. The interior is simple, it's modern, and more than just sort of aesthetic qualities. Everybody's going to have different tastes. Some people are going to like it, some people aren't. Certainly, the Cybertruck is very polarizing. Some love it, some hate it. But really, just the functionality. I mean, it's like getting an iPhone. Never having to get in a car that's too hot or too cold because you can remotely precondition it. Even when it's in a garage, you can start cooling or heating it without turning on the engine. So the other day, I had to move a car that was sitting into the sun. It was like baking hot. I was like, oh my God, I forgot what a painful experience this is. I've been driving a Tesla for years. Things like the phone key, where you don't have a key, you just walk in and out, and your phone can pair to multiple Teslas. Your profile syncs. So I was driving my friend's car. I told her I'd take it to the service center for her while she was out of the country. And all my profile loaded in, all my destinations, my recent addresses, everything from my other Teslas. And of course, the full self-driving, the safety. They don't have an engine. It's like a giant crumple zone in the front. People have fallen off cliffs and survived because of the structural safety of this thing. Not to mention the advanced AI. So, to not get a car that's safer, better, more modern because you think your Honda looks better strikes me as a little silly. I would recommend throwing a Model 3 or a Model Y for a week, or even test driving a Cybertruck and seeing how you like using it.
Cyber Rob and Lucha.
Yeah, quick question. In the event that companies start mass adopting licensed FSD, if and when that happens, how quick and easy do you guys think it'll be to start implementing that if you're the other manufacturers? Are they good? Do you think those use existing
Many years.
cameras?
It'll
Many
take 3 to
years
5 years to integrate into a new vehicle.
after they decide.
Okay,
After they get their
gotcha.
committees around.
Chinese companies maybe half that time.
Well, I mean, BYD just signed a deal with Baidu with their LiDAR. So, yeah,
You
maybe
mean with
some other.
Huawei?
Well, yeah, exactly. Wow, that's my bad. Maybe some other Chinese automaker will sign a deal with Tesla. I don't know. It's many years away. I mean, even Tesla said that. Even Elon said it in the last earnings call, right? Was it Elon or somebody else who
Yeah.
said it? Yeah.
I mean, their product development cycle is just that long. They don't bring products out faster than that.
Yeah. Luce.
So the brand damage that Elon Musk is doing by speaking up is way more here in Europe, where basically all the media is owned by the left, and the people themselves don't speak English, so they don't really understand what Elon Musk is saying on Twitter. They don't read it, they don't know about it. So basically, if you amplify the negative effect, you get what is happening here in Europe about Elon. You in USA have actually you can have a positive when Elon Musk speaks up without.
Well, I think that the European car industry is certainly very threatened by what Tesla's doing. I'm not sure that even if he was a liberal hero, they would be writing very nice things about him.
Exactly. And they didn't for years before he started becoming more political in the last 12 to 18 months. So they've neutered FSD, navigating autopilot for years before that. So yeah, I'm not too worried about it. I mean, I feel like okay. Dude, if people really cared about Tesla's tweets and that's the reason why they're not buying Teslas, they would just buy Rivian and Rivian would survive. Okay. So Yoda.
Yeah, if the US is roughly 50-50 split between the two parties, 50% is still a large headroom for Tesla to grow in. And by the way, Omar, you're such a liar. I asked for a chart for you to plot Tesla performance with Dow and the S&P. Could you please do that again?
Why do you not see the tiny little lines down there near the x-axis?
Oh wait. Okay, yeah, I
Yeah.
see those flat lines now.
Yeah. I mean, listen, look, Grant, is he here? But he is correct. So we have to kind of call it as it is. He is correct that since Q3 of 20, since basically Tesla was added to the S&P 500 index, it's underperformed S&P 500 index. And but where he's wrong, I think, is looking forward, how Tesla will continue, if we're going to see another surge, or if what Grant believes is going to happen, which is continue to underperform. But you got to call the facts the way they are. Now you can extend the starting point to include 2019, 2020, then Yoda would be right. Right. So it depends on where your starting point is. But he specified November 2020 when he shorted, he said. W.
Hey guys, I have a friend and he don't likes Elon, but he drives a Tesla. It's very funny. And I work in the automotive industry, so in Germany, and I can say the mood is very bad here. Yeah, but nobody talks about the reason. It's Tesla. It's only, I don't know. People have bad mood, but I don't know the reason.
Yeah.
The CEO of our company, who I've had the fortune of meeting a few times and talking to, is the wealthiest and most powerful person on the planet right now. He has been so successful, in particular with this company, that he has become the wealthiest and most powerful person on the planet. He used to be an underdog taking on Big Auto. Now he's the big dog, and people see him differently. People pay a lot of attention to what he says. If Elon supported Trump back before Tesla in 2003, then it wouldn't even be a headline. It would maybe be in Valleywag. It wouldn't be in the New York Times. The only reason we care what this guy thinks about immigration is because he's the wealthiest and most powerful person on the planet. And that has brought a lot of benefits. RJ's a nice, great guy, but he was not able to ramp up production to millions of units a year. Our asshole CEO that everybody hates was able to do that. right? So this is what I call good problems to have. When you become so famous, so wealthy, and so powerful that people are worried about you single-handedly changing the results of the election with your smartphone in your pocket in 5 minutes in between your meetings, right? So I would rather have the most powerful man in the world running the company, even if that does come with a lot of resistance, a lot of hate, than having some schmuck run the company, uh, even if people don't know
Yeah,
about him or hate him.
yeah, and just the fact that all these people that are hating on Elon are leaving X to go to Threads, founded and run by the guy they hated in 2016, goes to show how quickly that these things can change. 180. These haters literally made a 180 and now finding refuge in Zuckerberg to go away, run away from Elon. And
Well,
when Tesla robotaxis come about, proliferate around the world, and where you're going around faster, safer, cheaper, they're going to come back to robotaxis and they're going to find the next person to hate.
Yeah, these are fundamentally losers. These are not people that we even want as our customers necessarily. People who are actually doing something, who are building businesses, who are helping their family, they're not overly concerned with this stuff. It's people who have never done much in their life. And you look at what this guy does in one day, launching a Starlink satellite last night, bringing internet to people who've never had it before, how that changes their lives. And that's just one side product. Letting paralyzed people be part of the world again with Neuralink, preventing crashes every day with FSD, rescuing astronauts from the space station. I mean, the amount of good this guy does for the world in 5 minutes is more than most of these haters will do in their lifetime.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah. I'm just, I agree with you that this is the future. No question. 100% agree with you, Omar. What I want to dig into is what it's going to take specifically. It's just a brain exercise because that forces us to discuss and try to understand the nuances of the future at a deeper level. Is it going to take FSD unsupervised? Is it going to take robotaxis? Is it going to take lower interest rates, like Yoda said? Is it going to take some other milestone for people to believe again that EVs are the future, not hybrids? So we shall see. I pinned at the top of your screens the screenshot. Edward, thank you very much again for the tip on YouTube. Really appreciate it when people support TSLA Live. A quick word to our sponsors. Thank you, Joa Life, for sponsoring TSLA Live. You can use the code TSLA Live to get 5% off your purchases at Joa. Deck out your car with the latest accessories. Also, pay more. You can sell their old electronics to any of the 100 plus locations around the country. Pay more, and hopefully we'll get a representative sometime next week to tell us more about pay more as well. All right. Any other questions, comments? We have NVIDIA earnings coming out soon. And then the earnings call is in about 2 hours. Any final words, Omar? Oh, we lost him. All right, everybody. Let's call it a day, and we'll continue tomorrow. Take care. Enjoy your evenings.